About 6 years ago, something happened to me while I was home alone that I'll never forget. Because of this, I had to get therapy for 5 months straight. And this is why I will never stay home alone again. I was 12 years old at the time of this story, and this took place in my hometown in Weymouth, Massachusetts. It's a very small town, as there was nothing to do, and the antique design of town made it look all so boring and old. One weekend, my mom had told me that she had recently gotten a call back from a job that she applied to, and that she had to go into Boston for an interview. She trusted me to watch over the house for a few hours while she was gone. With me being only 12, she went over the rules most parents tell their children when being left alone. Don't go outside, don't answer the door for anybody, etc. She then left and I had the house to myself for a few hours until she got back. With nothing to really do or anywhere to go, I simply threw myself onto my bed and flipped on my TV to the cartoons. About an hour later, I go downstairs while on my way to the kitchen, and I notice somebody standing in our backyard. He was facing off in the opposite direction, with both of his hands in his pockets, as if he were waiting for the bus. At first, I didn't get too worried, as a few men had been coming by to fix a pipe on the side of the house that had a major leak. However, this guy looked nothing like a plumber, or anyone who specializes in repairing pipes for that matter. He wore a black long-sleeved shirt, black pants, and a gray hoodie that surely covered most of his face. I don't even remember thinking twice about it. Anyway, I had went back upstairs and finished up my TV shows and decided to go take a shower as I had a birthday to go to later that night. I turn on the shower and go in for about 15 minutes. I take really long showers, so whenever I'm home alone, I go mental. After I was done, I turned off the water, and that's when I hear the front door open. My first thought was that it was my mom finally home from her interview, so I shoot her a text asking if she was home, and within a minute, she replies with, "Hey honey, I just got finished with the interview. I'm driving home now. Is everything okay?" That's when I get a sharp pain into the pit of my stomach, knowing that someone was in my house, and it wasn't my mom. Why my dad isn't home is another story, but I take a deep breath to compose myself and wrap a towel around me, and slowly creep down the steps to try and see who it was. Looking back, that was probably the most stupidest decision of my life. As I reached the bottom step, I peek around the corner and felt my blood run cold. There was a man, about 6'6", and looked to me in his mid-30s standing in my kitchen. He was holding a large wrench in his hand and was looking directly at me as if he knew I was coming down the stairs. Then, very quietly, he said 5 words that still haunt me to this day. "Run while you still can." That's when I lost it and started screaming while running up the stairs and into my room while locking the door. All the while, I began hearing footsteps coming up the stairs and stopping at my door. I knew he was there because I could see the outlines of his shoes at the bottom of the door frame. He began banging on the door, loudly with a wrench, demanding me to let him in. At this point, calling the police wasn't an option, so I did the only thing I could do. I slowly opened my window and jumped out onto the patio floor. Even though I tried to break my fall, I still landed with some minor injuries. I felt as if 1,000 pounds had been lifted off of me when I see my mom's car pull into the driveway. I run crying to her, explaining the situation, and she immediately takes out her .45 she keeps in her purse and walks into the house. I'd like to mention that my mom had served 3 years in the military, so she knew what she was doing. I heard 2 very loud gunshots from inside my room, followed by yelling and screaming. Police had been called by my neighbors, who apparently had heard the gunshots, and police then took this nightmare guy away. The look the man gave me as he was forced into the back seat of the police car was something that I'd never forget. It was a look of pure hatred and anger, like the first thing he would do once he got out of jail would be to come back for me. We had since moved out of that house a month later due to the constant paranoia I was having, which eventually made me have mental therapy as previously mentioned before. I don't know what the man's intentions were, but if he had a wrench with him, Chances are he was probably planning on doing a lot more than just robbing us. The summer after I graduated from high school, my parents had planned a trip for them to visit my aunt. During that time, they had agreed to let me stay home and have a small party with just a few of my friends to celebrate a successful school year. The party went off without a hitch. There was no funny business, and when it was time to clear out and go home, everyone listened to me when I told them to leave. All in all, I thought the night was a success. That was until I went up to my room for some sleep. I was pretty tired, so after cleaning up a bit, I decided to leave the rest for the morning, and I would handle it all after waking up. I made sure to lock all the doors, and I went upstairs to go to sleep. I knew I was tired because I was asleep within 2 minutes after my head touched the pillow. It was like turning off a light. Sadly, as quickly as I fell asleep, I was woken up. My eyes shot open as I heard the sound of something slamming downstairs. I knew something had fallen, but I couldn't think of what it could have been. I mean, I was home alone, so I didn't know what could have fallen on its own. And that was when I realized it. Someone else must have been in the house with me. I did my best to stay silent and listen as closely as I could, and sure enough, I could hear the sound of one or more people walking around downstairs. I assumed it was just some kids from the party who hadn't heard me tell everyone to go home, so I figured I would just call out to them. I got out of bed and walked over to my door. I cracked it open and yelled, "Hey, the party's over." Everyone went home. Suddenly, there was silence. I could tell that something wasn't right. Out of nowhere, I could hear the slamming of footsteps as whoever it was began running through my house and towards the staircase. I didn't even think. I closed my door and ran straight for the window above my bed. I had used the window to sneak out of my house before, so I knew how to get in and out of it quickly. I slid right through it and onto the roof of my house. As I turned back, I could see my door handle moving as if someone was struggling to open it. I turned and began to make my way down the side of my house and ran across my yard into my neighbors. After pounding on the door for a minute, they came running out. I informed them about the intruders in my house, and they told me to come inside, and they would call the cops. While we waited for them to arrive, we were shocked to see 3 different people fleeing from my house. None of them appeared to be carrying any stolen property, which either means they didn't find anything worth taking, or that they were there for a more violent reason. Since the incident, my parents have installed security cameras along with an alarm system. Luckily, we have never had a similar situation occur. This happened to me when I was in my early years as a teenager. I was 14 years old, and I was staying at my grandma's house for the weekend, as she had lived far from us at the time, and we didn't see her often. She lived way out into the country, and for some reason, she didn't drive even though it seemed convenient for her, especially living isolated. One day, my grandma told me that she was going to her local grocery store to pick up a few things and asked if I wanted to come. The grocery store was about a 6-mile long walk from my grandma's house, and with me being a lazy and boring kid, I refused and figured I'd just watch some shows on TV. My grandma was 84 at the time, and surprisingly, as old as she was, she still had a lot of strength in her, which is why she took long walks. Fast forward a few hours later, it was now past 6 and the sun was starting to set. I was on the TV watching a SpongeBob episode when I hear what sounded like faint laughing coming from outside. I lowered the TV to see if I could hear it again, and when I did, I could confirm that there was indeed somebody out there. However, there was something very off-putting about the laughing. It was hard to describe, but I remember it sounding like a little girl's laugh with no language skills. It was freaky as hell, and I got up to look through the windows to see if anyone was out there. But to my surprise, there didn't seem to be anyone. My instincts told me to call out to whoever was there or at least open the door, but I was naturally afraid at this point. 5 minutes go by, and I didn't hear the laughing again, so I quietly opened the door to see if anyone was there. Nothing. The very second I took one step outside, I hear the laughing almost instantly coming from a big tree, much louder than before. I didn't even dream of looking behind that tree to see who was there. All I did was go back inside and lock all of the doors and continued watching my show. I have yet to hear that laugh since, and I haven't told anyone else about this. Till this day, I still wonder what would have happened had I walked over to that tree to see who or what was there. When I was 15, I moved in with my aunt and uncle as my parents had recently gotten separated due to reasons I won't go into. Therefore, my aunt and uncle took me in to go live with them. Both my aunt and uncle worked in the medical field at the time, and their shifts would often change from time to time, meaning I would be home alone for some time. My uncle never got me a babysitter as he didn't baby people and figured as long as he trusted me that it would be fine to let me stay alone. One evening, both my aunt and uncle were doing their nightly routine of working, while I was at home watching a movie trying to take a nap on the couch. For some reason, I always had a hard time falling asleep on nights like this, so I probably laid there for about a good half hour or so when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. I turned to my left and saw a man looking through our window. Our living room window is massive. You might as well consider it as a glass wall. Now we have an alarm system, but the only time the alarm goes off is if the glass breaks, and I couldn't move to call the police as our home phone was located in the kitchen, and I didn't want to be spotted by him. Of course, I immediately freeze and try not to be noticed, but it seemed as if he didn't know I was there. He was not a pleasant-looking man. I saw craze in his eyes indicating that he was on something, but I still laid there watching him. He wore a black jacket and some torn jeans, and his hair was a mess. As nice as our neighborhood was, we had a few homeless people roaming the area. Eventually, after taking several looks inside, he walked off into the trees, and that's when I noticed sticking out of his right pocket was a handgun. I ran upstairs into my room and stayed up there for the remainder of the night. I told my uncle about this, and I remember him going out the following week to install a camera system.